Welcome to That One Show with Brian Combs live from Lexington Comic Con. Thank you. We are a podcast housed here in Kentucky, 100% independent, that covers a variety of topics. We've done comic books, we've done Star Wars, we've ranked all the MCU movies, we've done music, and from time to time we do pro wrestling. My co-host on all episodes about pro wrestling is my main man here, Lance Turner. Lance, how are you today, brother?
I'm doing real good and very glad to be here today. This is my first time here at the Lexington Toy and Comic Convention, so I'm very happy to be here.
We appreciate you all taking the time to come in. There's a million things going on in and around the convention center today. For you all to take a few minutes to stop by and see our show, we greatly appreciate you. Today's topic is the Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling. So obviously we will be choosing 4 wrestlers, and each of us are going to pick 2 each. 2 plus 2 does equal 4. And the way I look at Mount Rushmore, it's not necessarily the greatest presidents of all time, although arguably there may be a few on there, but the most iconic. So I tried to put my personal feelings aside when picking my wrestlers, and I think Lance wants me to go first. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce my wrestler by the way they do when they call him to the ring. Standing at 6'7", 302 pounds from Venice Beach, California, is Hulk Hogan. Now, I was hesitant to put Hulk on the Mount Rushmore professional wrestling because obviously a few years ago he got in some trouble because he went on a very public racist rant. But then I looked up, Lance, and there was 2 fellas on the actual Mount Rushmore that owned slaves. So I figured it was all right for us to put him on the imaginary Mount Rushmore professional wrestling.
Yeah, and not only about that too, but on top of that too, I feel like he did very publicly apologize. Whether he was sincere in that or not, nobody really knows except for him. But it seems like the WWE, their officials and management, along with most fans, it does appear that they have forgiven Hogan for his transgressions. So I'm like you, despite the personal stuff outside of the ring, it's hard for me to imagine a Mount Rushmore pro wrestling without Hulk Hogan on it.
Well, he's arguably the most important pro wrestler of all time. And just going over some of his accomplishments: 12-time heavyweight champion of the world, Hall of Fame twice, once as a singles wrestler and once as a member of the NWO. Run the Royal Rumble 2 times, and main evented multiple WrestleManias, the most famous of being probably the biggest match still to this day in professional wrestling as far as significance against Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. 90-some thousand people at the Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, Michigan. And when he first won the heavyweight title back in the 80s, wrestling was really not a national thing. They had these, what they called regional territories.
Yes.
And he pretty much took wrestling to the national stage. He took, the first pay-per-views, Saturday night's main event on NBC. There's no way that professional wrestling would be as popular still to this day, 40-some years later, without Hulk Hogan. And one of the caveats when I made my list, and for you all not familiar with professional wrestling, a good guy is a face and a bad guy, quote unquote, hey, come on in, is a heel. Come get you a koozie. And Hogan had 2 all-time babyface runs and heel runs. Appreciate y'all. He was one that I think there's a few moments. If you've watched wrestling long enough, you kind of see a lot of stuff coming, don't you, Lance?
Yeah.
But one of the few things I never saw coming was him turning bad or quote-unquote heel. Yes. Back in Bash at the Beach in 1996 when he joined the NWO. He laid that leg drop on the Macho Man, and the people, one thing I'd never seen before, they started throwing garbage in the ring at him and whatnot, and he cut a promo on them and lit them up, and pretty much, told them that he didn't even want their cheers no more, and they did. And Mean Gene Oakland, poor fella, his bald head turned blood red, and he about had a stroke in the ring. And I know you, as a longtime wrestling fan, that moment has to be a top 2 or 3 moment ever for you as a wrestling fan and viewer, right, Lance?
Yeah, absolutely, it was. And like you said, very few times us fans that watch pro wrestling for years and years can be fooled. Probably you can count them on one hand, but that one was definitely one of them. And that just, to me, that extended his career for another several years and led to his return and shock and run. I think it was in '02 when he returned to WWE again. So just an amazing career overall. But yeah, him turning into Hollywood Hogan was one of the biggest moments, I think, in professional wrestling history.
So, Lance, if I was to ask you what's your personal favorite Hulk Hogan match of all time, I know my answer. It's one I've watched, went back since they put up all the old pay-per-views and everything on Peacock. I've went back and watched his match with The Rock at WrestleMania 18 probably a dozen times over the past 3 or 4 years. That's unbelievable, and that might be the best crowd I've ever seen for any particular one match in wrestling history. It was at the Sky Dome up in Toronto, Ontario. And Hulk was still in his run as Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and he was a heel. But for whatever reason, from the very beginning of that match, the crowd decided they was going to start cheering him. Yes. And I remember he actually hulked up for the first time in, 8 years maybe? And the crowd lost their collective minds.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm right there with you. The WrestleMania 18 Hogan versus The Rock is not only my favorite Hogan match, but it's probably my favorite match. The return and watch over and over again. Like you said, an incredibly hot crowd, and as you mentioned, they kind of switched the roles around. Hogan was the heel, The Rock the babyface going into it, but as the match progressed, you've seen Hogan transition into the face, and The Rock, to his credit, kind of played up a little bit on the heel side of things as the match went on, and I've seen countless interviews where Hogan gives a lot of credit to The Rock for handling that moment so well, and a credit to Hogan too. He probably didn't plan on doing his hook up and all that stuff either. So I thought they handled it great, and it's just a fun match. And when you've got, and I always tell people, to me, another big factor in what makes a great match is the crowd. And that was one of the greatest crowds I've ever seen during the match.
All right, Lance, who you got for your first professional wrestler to be forever enshrined on the official, according to you and I at least, Mount Rushmore of professional wrestlers?
Well, for me, you can't have a Mount Rushmore without your guy Hogan. And for me, I can't see anyone having a Mount Rushmore without the Nature Boy Ric Flair on there. He is my choice. I'm sure there's a lot of fans in my age group that grew up watching Flair on the old TBS Superstation. He started out too, as you alluded to earlier, in the territories, the old NWA days and Jim Crockett Promotions. And then they, of course, became WCW, I think, probably when Ted Turner and his company were able to purchase them and things of that nature. But to me, it's hard to have him on there. He's a 16-time world champion. I believe he's held the U.S. title 6 times, and then he also held the TV title and tag titles as well over his long career. And just incredible rivalries with Dusty Rhodes, Harley Race. He was part of arguably one of the greatest stables of all time, the Four Horsemen.
Yes.
And then later on, I thought it was a fun little group, Evolution, that he was a part of when he there made his final run in the WWE. I thought that was a fun group. And then on top of that too, just so many iconic moments. To me, if he isn't the best, he's definitely has to be in the top 2 or 3 all-time in-ring performers. He was doing 60 and 90-minute matches at points of his career, and then there's not too many better, if there is better, on the mic either. So many iconic catchphrases, the iconic woo, and to beat the man, you've got to beat the man, and there are just countless others that we could go on and on with. So for me, Ric Flair has to be on the Mount Rushmore.
I agree 100%. And, you know, I think he's intertwined with Sting as one of the greatest rivalries in the history of professional wrestling. And, you know, not to spoil anything, but Sting didn't make my list, and I'm going to tell you why he didn't make it. How many times can one fella fall for the same trick? Ric Flair would always act like he was going to be his friend, and it always ended in the same way with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen just stomping him out. And I don't understand why you just keep fighting. It's like somebody's, you know, significant other cheats on you 5 or 6 times, but you keep going back to them thinking they ain't going to cheat on you for the 7th time. It's going to happen. It's just going to happen. But, yeah, I'm with you. And for my money, he was the winner of the best Royal Rumble ever back in '92. Come in at number 3, and you went on about how he lasted an hour or so in his matches. Dude went like I think about an hour and 6 minutes and won that. And you was talking about people that was in that Royal Rumble. You had Hogan in it. You had Randy Savage, Jake the Snake Roberts. I mean, just a murderer's row of future Hall of Famers. And he won that thing, Lance. And that was when he gave his famous "with a tear in my eye, this is the greatest day of my life" speech in the locker room. And if you go back on Peacock and watch that, Bobby the Brain Heenan's color commentary during that match is high art and should be in the Hall of Fame just for announcers. Because he was openly rooting for Flair, and he was, you know, he had that famous line when he drew number 3 and come out, because nobody had ever won, I think, from like lower than about 12 or 14 at that point. He's like, "This ain't fair to Flair. This ain't fair to Flair." And he about had a stroke, and then he ended up winning when Hogan and I guess it was Sid Justice at the time. Yes. Those were the final 3. And they had came in, I think, at like numbers 20 and 23. And Flair had been in for over an hour. And both of them had the size advantage on him, but he still came out on top. Yeah. And that alone should cement him on Mount Rushmore, aside from all of his other accomplishments. You got anything you want to add about the Nature Boy? I will add this. He was supposed to have been at Comic-Con here a few years ago, and I was going to pay $100 to see him. And they come over the intercom that he was sick and wasn't going to be able to make it. And I looked on his Instagram, and that SOB was in Chicago with 3 good-looking women about 30-year-old having dinner with him. He wasn't sick.
No, he was just living up to his Nature Boy persona.
He lived his gimmick.
He lived it, the styling and profiling. He lived it all.
And let me say this, too, and this is real. We all adults here, and we know that wrestling's scripted. But I'm going to lay some stuff on you that's facts. He's had 3 heart attacks, a stroke, been struck by lightning, and been in a plane wreck, and he's not dead.
No, still going today. Actually, I think it was maybe just last year. Had a little mini. I don't think he competed, but I mean he was out there in AEW a little bit. Sting was doing like a farewell run. It could have been a couple years ago now, and he wanted to be a part of that. And you mentioned why Sting wasn't on your Mount Rushmore. For me, the reason I didn't have Sting on mine was I think that he spent too much time. No disrespect to TNA and AEW, I just think he spent a little too much time in what I consider maybe a little bit of a lower promotions, and didn't have enough, runs, with WCW and WWE. He had that little mini run, but, he's one of the all-time greats, don't get me wrong, but that's one of the reasons I didn't really have him on mine.
All right, so for my next one, I wanted to highlight somebody that was very much integral to what I consider the best era of professional wrestling, which is the Attitude Era of the late 90s and early 2000s. And I was down between 2 wrestlers. I still hadn't made my decision, and last Friday night I was watching SmackDown, and The Rock came out and started cutting a promo on Cody Rhodes. Now, if anybody knows me and my show, which was formerly a radio show, knows that I'm a huge fan of Sturgill Simpson. For one thing, he lived in Jackson, which is our hometown, Lance, for the first 9 years of his life. Yes. If you come in off of Highway 15, there's a sign, home of Grammy winner Sturgill Simpson. For whatever reason, during this promo, The Rock said that Sturgill Simpson was his all-time favorite country music singer, and even started singing some of his song, and that just put him on over the top for me. Yeah. Y'all can clap, that's fine. So I looked at my wife Dixie and I said, "Yeah," I said, "I got to put him on there now," and because that was totally out of the blue for one thing. But besides him being a fan of Sturgill Simpson, he is a 10-time world heavyweight champion, 2-time intercontinental champion, Royal Rumble winner, 5-time champ. He is what they call the Triple Crown winner, the Grand Slam winner, which means he's won every available title that was available for him to win during his career, which only a handful of people do. He's been a heel. He's been a face. He's had many personas. He started out as Rocky Maivia, and it was a horrible gimmick, Lance. And the crowd started chanting, "Die, Rocky, die," even though he's supposed to be a good guy. So they turned him heel. He joined up with the Nation of Domination. And from there, he pretty much took off on a rocket ship to stardom. The people really started getting behind him, and he turned heel and joined the corporation at Survivor Series one year and was the corporate champ. And on a personal note, the very next night at Monday Night Raw, his first title match as a heavyweight champion was against Stone Cold Steve Austin. I was on the front row. They fell over and landed on me. If you can watch that show on Netflix, and you can see me for about 20 seconds. I was a huge geek in high school. That was my senior year. For the day after that, when like half the school saw me on national TV, was the only time I was ever popular in the 4 years of high school, and that lasted about 3 minutes of people congratulating me as I came in through the hallway, and by a second period they were throwing crap at me again, Lance, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But The Rock, to me, you mentioned Flair on the mic. I think The Rock's the best ever on the mic, and I don't even think that's up for debate. I mean, my God. Go back and watch This Is Your Life segment with him and Mick Foley, which is unusual because it went like a half hour of just two people talking, and it's one of the most entertaining things in the history of professional wrestling. He can impersonate other wrestlers. He can cut you down probably better than anybody ever could on a mic. And he's one of those, when they turn him heel, the people still want to cheer for him. You can't hardly keep him heel, Lance. You just can't do it. Even when he's calling you trailer park trash to your face, you still want to cheer for the man because he's so charismatic. What's your thoughts on The Rock as our third entrance on the Mount Rushmore professional wrestling?
Yeah, no doubt. I agree with everything you said about The Rock, and I do agree that there's probably nobody more entertaining than The Rock. And as you mentioned, I think him coming back these last couple of years has kind of cemented his place on the Mount Rushmore. He's still a big time attraction, still able to cut the great promos. And some of the funniest things that I remember about The Rock, as you mentioned, the It's Your Life segment, which I agree with you is one of the greatest, non-wrestling segments in wrestling history. But I also really enjoyed what he calls his rock concerts. One of the funniest ones I'll never forget is the ones when he came out and sang that Vicky Guerrero.
Oh God. We got some people we got mixed company in the room, so we better not.
I won't quote it. I won't go into it. I'll just tell people to go and watch it. I'm not going to sing it, but I think it was done kind of in the tune of "Wonderful Tonight," the great Eric Clapton classic, and I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, just so entertaining, and they don't even have to wrestle. And as you mentioned, all his accolades, he's one of those guys that kind of transcended titles, was able to do that. He didn't really need the title to be a main eventer and a must-see draw. And right now, he's kind of having a little run as, a real-life part of the board that runs WWE and calls himself the final boss now. And just an incredible wrestler, and definitely deserves his place among the Mount Rushmore.
All right, Lance, it's time for you. You've got a big decision on your hands because by my count, there's probably 7 or 8 people that's worthy of this last spot on the Mount Rushmore professional wrestling, and it's all on you to pick the right one, my friend. So you better pick the right one, brother.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that's too much pressure. I'm not as good as these guys are under the pressure, but I'll tell you, my final spot is going to go to Shawn Michaels.
The Heartbreak Kid.
Yeah, you could probably argue a lot of other ones. Probably The Rock's greatest rival was Stone Cold Steve Austin. For me, it was really hard to not have him on the list. But when you look at so many different things, and as you get older, you kind of appreciate other guys and their accomplishments. And the main reason that I have Shawn Michaels on my list, I think I made this comparison once before on a show that you and I have done about wrestling, was that I really truly believe that he's one of those guys that's so gifted in the ring that you could put him in there with a broom or a mop and people would give it a 5-star rating by the time it was done. That's how good he was in the ring. Now, with all the people that we've talked about, he's probably the least effective one on the mic. Now, that's not saying that he can't talk or cut a promo. I just think that he's probably the least one on the mic. But in the ring, he's right up there with the best. If he isn't the best, I mean, you can argue Flair and other people, but he is the ultimate in-ring performer, and he like Flair as well, was part of a tremendous faction, and DX kind of helped usher in the Attitude Era at that time. And no one had really seen anything like DX. They came out and did what they wanted to do, and kind of the if you want to call it, kind of the sophomoric actions and innuendos that they would cut on Sergeant Slaughter and other people who happens to be here.
I got a question for you, buddy.
Yes.
DX, so that was when you and I was in high school. Give or take, how many times did you give a crotch chop to somebody in the halls of Breathitt County High School?
Well, I couldn't guess the number. Probably every time my buddies seen each other, we'd give them the DX crotch.
I got sent to in-school suspension for crotch chopping a teacher one time when I was a junior. But he deserved it.
Oh, no doubt. Whoever got it deserved it. There's no doubt about that. I was lucky enough. I didn't get in trouble. I did get a warning one time in the hallway. But I
stayed in trouble.
But there was so many of us doing it. I guess they thought it wasn't fair just to single me out. But I guess that's the only thing that saved me. But yeah, they were. Back then they were one of the coolest things going, and he was part of that. And then of course he had some issues and a really bad back injury. Had to step away, but one could argue that when he came back, he was better than when he left. Just had that unsanctioned match with Triple H at SummerSlam kind of set the stage, and then he had such great matches with Ric Flair and The Undertaker later on that for me, it's hard to leave him off, and I couldn't do it. And we talked about out of the ring segments. How about him throwing Marty Jannetty through the barbershop glass? I mean, that's about as iconic of an out-of-ring segment as you'll find. Once again, my spot goes to the Heartbreak Kid, HBK, Shawn Michaels.
All right, so I'll give a quick few thoughts on Shawn Michaels. We'll do one honorable mention, and then we'll open it up if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask us in the last couple of minutes here. Once again, we thank you all for taking time to come watch us. We know that you've got at least 100 different things you could choose to do with your time right now at Comic-Con, and you chose to come see us, so we appreciate you. I think Shawn Michaels is easily the best in-ring performer ever, and I don't think it's close. When Ric Flair, I think, was like 59, they had Match of the Year, and most of that was due to Michaels. The greatest match in the history of professional wrestling, in my opinion, is him and The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. It was so good that it made Jim Ross declare live on air that he had an out-of-body experience, and there ain't very many things in this world that do that to a man. You mentioned he was better when he came. He broke his back in a casket match. And wrestled with 3 broken vertebrae, a 45-minute match about a month later at WrestleMania against Steve Austin. And the reason why he was so much better when he came back is because he was sober.
Right.
If you read his book, if you listen to him talk, he pretty much wrestled all the way through the 90s, either high, drunk, or both.
Right.
And I remember that when he threw Marty Jannetty through the plate glass window of the barbershop. Bobby the Brain Heenan, he said, would you look at Janetti? He's scared to death and he's trying to escape. Which, with Bobby the Brain Heenan, if we did the Mount Rushmores of managers and or color commentaries, he'd have to be on there, Lance.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll give one quick honorable mention, just real quick. We'll just name them, and won't say a whole lot about them, and let these people get on about exploring other celebrities and booths at Comic-Con. If I could put one more person on the list, it'd be the Undertaker for the fact that I think it's the greatest gimmick ever, and he was relevant for almost 40 years, pretty much from about 1990 all the way up until about 2018. Give me one honorable mention real quick, Lance.
Real quickly, an honorable mention for me, who just recently became an honorable mention for me, would be John Cena, a 16-time world champion. He's got a chance to break the record that he's tied for with one of my Mount Rushmore guys, the Nature Boy Ric Flair. But just recently, he, for the first time in over a 2-decade career, decided to make a heel turn. He did it in tremendously fashion. So he suddenly became an honorable mention for me, is John Cena.
I got a question. Who would you all, one that we didn't mention, shout one out, Ron, if you want to.
I'm old.
That's cool. That's a perspective, because he and I.
If you mention the word wrestling, Andre the Giant.
Andre.
Yes, Andre the Giant, definitely.
I started that with 8, and he was on the 8.
If there was a certain time, if you just made the word.
Yeah, and earlier we mentioned that the most important match in the history of professional wrestling was Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. And even though we put Hogan on here, any good story, be it professional wrestling, be it a comic book, be it a movie, you have to have a great villain and a great hero. And Andre was a great villain. He turned heel. He ripped Hogan's cross off, cut him on his chest on Piper's Pit. And I absolutely agree with you. Andre's deserving on there. Y'all got any questions for us, wrestling or otherwise? Y'all having fun?
Yes.
Y'all come every year, right?
Yeah.
Doing a whole weekend?
Mini spring vacation.
We're here the whole time.
My wife makes fun of me because I usually save up all year for what I'm going to splurge on the vendor moose here. I budget all year long for my Comic-Con weekend. Well, we thank you all for coming. I thank my co-host, Lance Turner,
Yes.
live from Lexington Comic Con. This has been That One Show with Brian Combs.